The day my life changed didn't begin with shouting. It began with silence. A heavy, uncomfortable silence that filled the living room as my daughter stood in front of me, holding a sheet of paper like it carried authority. "Mom, starting tomorrow, this is your routine." Her voice was steady, too steady. I looked up from the tea in my hands, confused. For a second, I thought she was joking. Maybe it was a list for the kids. Maybe something small. But her expression didn't change. She was serious. I slowly reached out and took the paper. The moment my eyes touched the first line, something inside me tightened. 6 a.m., wake up and prepare breakfast. 7 a.m., get the children ready for school. 8 a.m., full house cleaning. 9 a.m., laundry and ironing. 10 a.m., prepare lunch. My fingers began to tremble. I kept reading. There was no break, no pause, no space to breathe. Every hour, assigned. Every moment, controlled. By the time I reached the last line, 11 p.m., prepare clothes for next day and kitchen check. I realized something that made my chest feel hollow. This wasn't help. This wasn't planning. This was control. I looked up slowly. "Sadia, what is this?" Before she could answer, Faisal's voice came lazily from the couch. "It's a schedule. Pretty simple." He didn't even bother looking at me. His eyes were glued to his phone, his tone casual, as if he were discussing the weather. "And obviously," he added, "this includes managing household expenses. That's what your pension is for, right?" My heart skipped. "My pension," I repeated softly. Sadia sighed, like I was being unnecessarily difficult. "Mom, don't start. You live here, you eat here, it's normal you contribute." Contribute. The word echoed strangely in my head. Contribute, to my own house. I looked around the living room. The same room where I had spent years building memories. The same walls that had witnessed my struggles, my sacrifices, my quiet victories. And yet, nothing felt familiar anymore. The sofa was stained with food marks. The cushions were torn. The wooden table I once polished every weekend now had deep scratches across its surface. Even the walls felt different. My family photos were gone. Replaced by posters, by decorations that didn't belong to me. Slowly, painfully, I realized. This house no longer looked like my home. "You don't really do much all day, Mom," Faisal continued, stretching his legs. "At least now things will be organized." I felt the words hit me like a slap. "Don't do much," I repeated. My voice sounded distant, even to myself. 40 years. 40 years of waking up before sunrise. 40 years of working in an office, traveling long distances, saving every rupee. 40 years of raising a daughter alone, after her father walked away. And now, I don't do much. Sadia crossed her arms. "Mom, don't take it personally. We're just trying to make things run smoothly." Smoothly. I looked back at the paper in my hands. Every line felt heavier than the last. This wasn't organization. This was ownership. And I wasn't the owner anymore. "You need to decide," Sadia said after a moment. Her tone changed. It became colder. "If you don't agree, you can leave." The words didn't register immediately. "Leave?" I asked. "Yes," she replied simply. "We've been here for 2 years. We've contributed. We have rights too." My breath became uneven. "Rights? In my house?" Faisal finally looked up, a faint smirk on his face. "Let's be realistic. Where will you go? At least here, you're useful." Useful. That word again. It wrapped around my chest like a tight rope. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. All I could feel was something breaking inside me. At that moment, a small voice interrupted the tension. "Grandma, I'm hungry." I turned. My grandson stood there, holding his tablet, looking at me with innocent eyes. For him, nothing had changed. For him, I was still just Grandma. I forced a small smile. "I'll get you something, Beta." But before I could move, Sadia spoke again. "According to the schedule, this is snack time anyway." I froze. Schedule. Even my love, now had a time slot. I walked into the kitchen slowly. Each step felt heavier than the last. When I opened the pantry, my heart sank. It was almost empty. A few broken biscuits. A half-used bag of rice. An expired can pushed into the corner. I opened the fridge. 2 yogurts. 1 bottle. Leftovers from days ago. That's when the truth hit me fully. I was feeding them. I was paying for everything. I was running this house. And still, I was the one being told to contribute. From the living room, my granddaughter's voice echoed. Grandma, hurry. I closed my eyes for a second, took a deep breath, and tried to hold myself together. Because no matter what, they were still my grandchildren. Footsteps approached behind me. Sadia entered the kitchen, her heels clicking against the floor with a confidence I didn't recognize. Oh, and Mom, she said casually, placing another paper on the fridge, you'll need to go shopping tomorrow morning. I looked at the list. It was long, very long. This is too much, I said quietly. It's just basic things, she replied. Around $150. My hand tightened. $150. That was a large portion of my monthly pension. Sadia, I can't spend this much every week. She rolled her eyes. Mom, please, don't be selfish. There are kids in the house. Selfish. The word cut deeper than anything else. Selfish, for protecting my own money, my own home, my own life. Before I could respond, Faisal walked in, stretching like he had just finished a long day of work. Hey, he said casually, opening the fridge. What's for dinner? I stared at him. You haven't even left the house today. I work from home, he replied, taking out a drink. It's stressful, stressful. I remembered seeing him asleep on the couch earlier. But I said nothing, because something inside me had gone quiet. Too quiet. That night, I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling. The same ceiling I had looked at for years. The same room where I had cried, dreamed, healed. And now, even this room didn't feel safe anymore. Because I knew, soon, it wouldn't be mine either. I turned to the side, trying to close my eyes. But sleep didn't come. Instead, memories did. The day Sadia was born. The first time she called me, Ami. The nights I stayed awake when she was sick. The sacrifices I made so she could study, grow, succeed. And then, the day she came back, 2 years ago. Crying, broken. Ami, we have nowhere else to go. And without thinking, I opened my door. I didn't know then, that I wasn't just letting them in. I was slowly, giving everything away. The clock showed 3:02 a.m. The house was supposed to be asleep. But I could hear something. A faint sound, coming from the kitchen. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe it was just my restless mind. Maybe I was overthinking everything that had happened. But then I heard it again. A cupboard opening, something falling, a spoon hitting the counter. I slowly sat up on my bed. My heart was beating faster than it should. For a moment, I just listened. The house was dark, silent, except for that noise. I wrapped my shawl around my shoulders and carefully stepped out of my room. The floor felt cold beneath my feet as I moved quietly down the hallway. Every step felt heavier, not because I was afraid of who might be in the kitchen, but because something deep inside me already knew. When I reached the doorway, I stopped. And what I saw didn't surprise me. It hurt me. Faisal stood there, in the middle of the kitchen, holding a cereal box. He was eating straight from it, dropping crumbs all over the counter I had cleaned just hours ago. Milk was spilled on the floor. The fridge door was left open. And the last remaining groceries were being finished. For a moment, I just stood there, watching, not saying anything, because suddenly, I understood something very clearly. This wasn't carelessness. This was habit. A habit created by the belief that someone else would always clean up after them. And that someone was me. Faisal, I finally spoke, my voice low but steady. He jumped slightly and turned around. Oh, it's you, he said casually, like nothing was wrong. Yes, I replied, it's me. He took another bite, not even bothering to stop. I was just hungry, he added. I nodded slowly. I can see that. My eyes moved to the nearly empty box. That was the last of the cereal. He shrugged. So, you'll buy more tomorrow. Just like that. No hesitation. No guilt. No thought. Just expectation. In that moment, something inside me shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But deeply. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked forward, picked up a cloth, and started wiping the spilled milk. Because that's what I had been doing for the last 2 years. Cleaning. fixing, adjusting, silently, but this time, it felt different. This time, I was aware. Aware of every drop, every crumb, every small act of disrespect that had slowly built this situation. Faisal finished eating and placed the empty box on the counter. "Good night," he said, as if everything was normal. And then he walked away. Back to the master bedroom. My bedroom. I stood there alone in the kitchen. At 3:15 a.m. Cleaning up after a grown man, in my own house. And for the first time, I didn't feel tired. I felt awake. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. 6 a.m. Exactly as written on the schedule. But this time, I didn't move. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking, not about breakfast, not about chores, but about my life. 40 years. 40 years of hard work. 40 years of sacrifice. And now, this. A schedule. Orders. Threats. In my own house. From downstairs, I heard movement. Drawers opening. Voices. Sadia's voice. "Mom, breakfast." I didn't respond. A few seconds later, her footsteps echoed in the hallway. Faster this time. More impatient. She pushed the door open. "Mom, it's already 6:30. Why isn't breakfast ready?" I slowly sat up, looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel fear. "I'm not making breakfast today." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Her expression changed instantly. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said." Her eyes narrowed. "Mom, this is not funny. I'm not joking." Silence filled the room. Behind her, Faisal appeared, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" he asked. "She's refusing," Sadia replied sharply. "Refusing," he repeated, confused. "Yes, breakfast, the schedule, everything." He looked at me, annoyed. Why? Such a small word, but it carried years of pain. "Because I'm not your employee," I said calmly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if they hadn't expected resistance. As if the idea that I could say, no, had never even crossed their minds. Then Sadia laughed. A short, sharp laugh. "Mom, don't start this again." "I'm not starting anything," I replied. "I'm ending it." That made her pause. Faisal frowned. "What does that mean?" I took a deep breath. "It means, no more schedule. No more orders. No more control." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Tension filled the air, heavy, uncomfortable. "You think you can just ignore everything?" Sadia said, her voice rising. "Yes," I replied. Her face hardened. "Then you can leave." There it was again. The same threat. But this time, it didn't scare me. I stood up slowly, walked toward her, and for the first time, I looked at her not as my little girl, but as someone who had crossed a line. "This house," I said quietly, "is mine." She didn't respond immediately, so I continued. "I bought it. I paid for it. I built my life here. And I allowed you to stay here, out of love." Faisal shifted uncomfortably. Sadia's confidence cracked slightly. But she quickly recovered. "We've been living here for 2 years," she said. "That gives us rights." "No," I replied calmly. "It doesn't." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. For the first time, they weren't sure what to say. Downstairs, the children's voices could be heard. Laughing. Playing. Unaware. Completely unaware of the storm building upstairs. Sadia took a step back. "You're overreacting," she said. "Am I?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. "Then tell me, would you treat anyone else this way?" She didn't answer. And that silence said everything. The word stayed in my mind long after I heard it. Lawyer. Sadia tried to lower her voice when she made the call, but walls in old houses have a way of carrying sound, especially when silence fills everything else. I didn't hear the full conversation. But I heard enough. "Yes, we've been living here for over 2 years. She's refusing now. We need to know our rights." I stood still in the hallway, my hand resting against the wall for support. So this was their next move. Not guilt. Not reflection. Not even a conversation. A lawyer. For a moment, fear returned. Not the loud kind. Not panic. But a quiet, creeping fear that settled deep in my chest. What if they were right? What if somehow, I had lost control legally as well? I wasn't educated in law. I didn't understand these things. I was just a woman who had worked her entire life, saved every rupee, and bought a house with honesty. But in that moment, doubt began to whisper. What if that wasn't enough? I went back to my room slowly, sat on the edge of my bed, and looked around. The same room they wanted to take from me. The same room that held every memory of my life. On the table beside me was an old file. Brown, worn out. I hadn't opened it in years. My hands hesitated for a second before I pulled it closer. Inside were documents, carefully folded, protected, important. I opened it, and there it was. The house deed. My name. Clear, undeniable. No joint ownership. No confusion. No condition. Just one name. Mine. I stared at it for a long time. And slowly, the fear inside me began to fade. Because truth has a strange power. It doesn't shout. It doesn't fight. But it stands, firm. That evening, the house felt different. Quieter. Colder. Sadia avoided me. Faisal didn't speak. Even the children seemed unusually silent, as if they could sense something had changed, even if they didn't understand what. At dinner time, no one called me. No one asked. No one expected. For the first time in 2 years. I didn't cook. And for the first time in 2 years. They had to figure things out themselves. I heard the kitchen cabinets opening, closing, utensils clattering, Faisal's irritated voice. Where is everything? Sadia's frustration. How should I know? She's the one who handles it. I sat quietly in my room, listening, not with satisfaction, not with anger, but with awareness. This was the life they had built. A life dependent on me. And now, they were facing it without me. Later that night, there was a knock on my door. Not a gentle one, a firm one. I opened it. Sadia stood there, her expression serious. We need to talk. I stepped aside. Come in. She walked in slowly, looking around the room, as if seeing it properly for the first time in years. Faisal followed behind her, arms crossed, face tense. Sadia took a deep breath. I spoke to a lawyer today. I know, I replied calmly. That caught her off guard. You were listening. I didn't need to listen, I said. I could feel it. She ignored that. The lawyer said, things aren't as simple as you think. I stayed silent. She continued. If someone has been living in a house for a long time, contributing, they can have certain rights. I looked at her carefully. What contributions? I asked quietly. She hesitated. For the house. For the family. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply said, I paid for everything. Silence. Faisal stepped forward. We've been maintaining the place, he said. I looked around. The broken furniture, the empty kitchen, the unpaid respect. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Sadia's tone softened slightly. Mom, we're not trying to fight you. Then what are you trying to do? I asked. She paused. And for a second, I saw something familiar in her eyes. Not arrogance, not control, but uncertainty. We just want stability, she said. Stability. The word felt ironic, because in trying to secure their future, they had destroyed mine. You already have stability, I replied. You have a roof. You have support. You have time. And what about you? She asked. The question surprised me, because for the first time, she was asking about me. I held her gaze. I had all of that, I said quietly. Until you took it. Silence filled the room again. Heavy, uncomfortable, real. Faisal broke it. Look, let's be practical, he said. We don't want problems. We just want a clear arrangement. Arrangement. That word again, like everything could be turned into a deal. A system. A control mechanism. I walked to the table, picked up the file, and opened it. This is the only arrangement that matters, I said, placing the document in front of them. They both leaned forward, reading, slowly, carefully, and as they read, their expressions changed. Confidence faded. This house, I said calmly, is legally mine. No conditions, no shared ownership, no claims, nothing. Sadia looked up. But the lawyer didn't tell you the full truth, I interrupted gently. Because deep down, I knew, no lawyer could change reality. Faisal stepped back, running a hand through his hair. This complicates things. No, I said, it simplifies everything. Sadia's voice dropped. So what are you saying? I took a deep breath, and said the words clearly. You have 1 week. The air froze. What? She whispered. 1 week, I repeated. To find another place. Her eyes widened. You're kicking us out. No, I said calmly. I'm taking my life back. Faisal stepped forward angrily. You can't just throw us out like this. I can, I replied. And I will. For a moment, it looked like he might argue more. But something stopped him. Maybe the certainty in my voice. Maybe the truth in my words. Or maybe, the realization that they had gone too far. Sadia's eyes filled with tears. But this time, I couldn't tell if they were real. Or just another form of control. Mom, please, she said softly. Think about the kids. That hit me, deep. Because no matter what, they were innocent. I closed my eyes for a second, gathering myself. And when I opened them, my voice was still steady. I am thinking about them. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Not because I was unsure, but because I knew something was still not finished. Sadia's crying echoed faintly through the walls. Soft, broken, but mixed with it, there was something else. Faisal's voice, low, careful. We need a backup plan. Those words stayed with me. Because they didn't sound like regret. They sounded like strategy. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. For 2 years, I had ignored the signs, the small changes, the subtle disrespect, the growing control. But now, I was seeing everything clearly. And clarity changes everything. The next morning, the house felt unusually quiet. No shouting, no demands, no schedule. I walked into the kitchen slowly. For the first time in years, I made tea for myself. Only for myself. Not for them, not for anyone else. Just me. And that simple act felt powerful. A few minutes later, Sadia entered. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale. She looked at me, differently. Not with authority, not with control, but with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Uncertainty. Mom, she said softly. I didn't respond immediately. I took a sip of my tea. Let the silence sit between us. Then I looked at her. Yes. She hesitated. We need to talk. I nodded toward the chair. Sit. She sat down slowly. Her hands were restless, fingers twisting together. I didn't sleep, she admitted. Neither did I replied calmly. There was a long pause. Then she finally said it. We don't have anywhere to go. There it was. The truth. Raw. Unfiltered. I looked at her carefully. For 2 years, I said quietly, you didn't think about that. Her eyes filled again. We thought things would improve. And they didn't, I finished. She shook her head. No. Faisal walked in just then. Less confident than before, less comfortable. He didn't sit. He just stood there, watching, measuring the situation. We need more time, he said. Straight to the point. Of course. No apology, no reflection, just a request. I held his gaze. How much time? He hesitated. A month. I shook my head slowly. No. Sadia looked up quickly. Mom, please. 1 week, I repeated. My voice was calm, but firm. You're being unreasonable, Faisal said, frustration creeping into his tone. No, I replied. I'm being fair. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Sadia leaned forward. What about the kids? She asked softly. That question was the hardest, because they were the only reason this situation had lasted so long. The only reason I had endured everything. I will always be there for them, I said. My voice softened slightly. But that doesn't mean I disappear for you. Her shoulders dropped, as if something inside her finally accepted reality. For the next few days, the house changed. Completely. No one gave me orders. No one handed me lists. No one told me what to do. Instead, they packed. Quietly. Tension filled every corner. Boxes appeared. Closets emptied. Drawers opened and closed. I stayed out of it. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood something important. Helping them again would only restart the cycle. On the 3rd day, something unexpected happened. My grandson came to me. Grandma, are we leaving? I looked at him, his innocent eyes searching for answers. Yes, beta, I said gently. Why? That question cut deeper than anything else. I pulled him close. Because sometimes, I said softly, people need to learn how to stand on their own. He didn't fully understand. But he nodded, and hugged me tightly. That hug almost broke my decision. Almost. On the 5th day, Sadia came to my room again. But this time, she didn't come with authority. She came with silence. She stood at the door for a moment. Then slowly walked in. "Mom," she whispered. I looked up. She looked smaller, not physically, but emotionally, like the strong, controlling version of her had finally cracked. "I'm sorry." The words were quiet, but real. I didn't respond immediately, because apologies are easy. Change is not. "For everything," she continued. "For how I spoke to you, for how I treated you." Her voice broke. I don't know when I became like this. I watched her carefully, trying to understand. Was this guilt, or fear? I thought. She continued, "I thought we were just adjusting." I shook my head slowly. "No," I said. "You were taking." She flinched slightly, but she didn't argue, because she knew it was true. "I didn't realize," she whispered. "I know," I replied. "And that's the problem." Tears rolled down her face. Real tears this time, not controlled, not calculated, just human. "Can you forgive me?" she asked. That question hung in the air. Heavy, complicated. I took a deep breath. "Forgiveness," I said slowly, "doesn't mean everything goes back to how it was." She nodded weakly. "I understand. And it doesn't mean you stay here," I added. That hurt her. I could see it. But she accepted it. "I know," she whispered. On the 7th day, they were ready. Bags packed. Children dressed. Car waiting outside. The house felt empty already. Even before they left, Sadia stood near the door, looking around, as if seeing the house for the first time. "I really messed up," she said quietly. I didn't reply, because some truths don't need responses. She stepped closer, then hugged me, tightly, like she used to, years ago. "I'll make it right," she whispered. I closed my eyes for a moment, then gently stepped back. "Make it right, with your actions," I said. Faisal nodded slightly, not saying much, but this time, he didn't argue. The children hugged me, one by one, and then, they left. The door closed, and just like that, the house was silent again. But this time, it wasn't empty, it was peaceful. I walked slowly into the living room, sat down, looked around. For the first time in 2 years, everything felt like mine again. No schedules, no orders, no fear, just freedom. I picked up my tea, took a deep breath, and allowed myself a small smile. Because finally, after everything, I had taken my life back. Sometimes, the hardest thing isn't letting people in, it's knowing when to let them go.